Well, it's April 1st. Happy April Fool's Day. Do you wish people a happy April Fool's Day? Feels like Mother Nature is pulling a bit of a prank on us this morning, is she not? We need the rain, but I bet there are many out there today with a big smile on their face, those who fight wildfires and those that have wells and ducks, I guess. All happy today. Also, happy opening day to all those recreational anglers out there, including myself. If you're on a stretch of river or on a lake today, not lost on me how lucky you are. Because the bad day fishing is better than a good day at work, right? Maybe after the show tomorrow, I'll get out and wet a line or two. Gas prices down 17 cents today. That's the minimum wage is up 50 cents an hour today. Personal exemptions increased by $3,000 and HST dropped by 1%. So there's an awful lot to digest there when it comes to those pocketbook issues. Some sad and, again, disturbing news from Dartmouth overnight. There's another shooting death. Very little being said from police thus far. I suspect we'll get more a little bit later today. That on top of the discussion we had yesterday with some of the calls that we took during our hour with the mayor and with the open hour after that. People are concerned about gun violence, and then we get another shooting death in HRM. It certainly is a sad situation. Federally, Paul Chang, that Liberal candidate that was at the center of the so-called bounty scandal, over comments about another candidate, has dropped out of the race. This after getting the support of Mark Carney. That, I'm sure, will be something you'll want to talk about later today in the open hour, which goes at 11 o'clock, by the way. Yesterday, we did get some comments from Mayor Fillmore. He's going to look into a contract that was handed out to a Toronto firm that to provide e-scooters to the downtown area over two local guys. The mayor did commit yesterday to saying that he's going to take a look at that. We're going to talk to Max Rastelli, who is one of those operators, in the first hour today and get his thoughts on it and how this is all going to play out in his opinion. So make sure you stick around for that. And don't forget, hour 3 today is Science Files with Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University, who will be here to answer all of your science-related questions. The science of rain, maybe. Maybe the science of politics. He's an astrophysicist. I don't think he's a political scientist, but who knows? We'll ask him anyway. But first, my very first guest today is Lisa Roberts. She's a Canadian politician, community leader based right here in HRM. She was a member of the Legislative Assembly for Halifax Needham from 2016 until 2021, representing the NDP party. Lisa obviously has been doing a whole lot of other things since. We've heard her on Information Morning back in the day. I don't want to say how long ago, but back in the day, because, she's back on radio. And the reason why she's back on the radio today is that she is representing the NDP in the federal race in the riding of Halifax. And we're very pleased to welcome Lisa to the studio. Did I get everything right?
Close enough. Good stuff. See? Yes, thank you.
It's always when people are in the studio and they're looking at me, I'm like, did I say that wrong? Did I get it right? Anyway, it's all good. Lisa, welcome. I guess the very first question and the broadest question I can ask to kick things off here is the campaign's been going on a little bit longer than most of the federal campaigns because of the whole by-election thing and everything else. So you've probably got an extra few days with the feet on the ground and the knuckles on the doorsteps. How's the campaign going?
It's going very well. I mean, the greatest challenge is always all the doors where nobody is home, and so you don't get to have a conversation. But when we find people at home, we are finding a lot of engagement and a lot of support. Sometimes people are questioning things and processing things, and I think, we are both citizens at this time in our country and in our world where there's an awful lot to process. And sometimes, when a politician shows up at your door, it's an opportunity to have those conversations and try to make sense of things together. But when it comes right down to the choice on the ballot on April 28th, I think a lot of people appreciate that Halifax has a long history with the NDP, that it was NDP under Alexa McDonough and Megan Leslie for, about 18 years right up until the Trudeau government, and that this is an opportunity to again send a strong NDP, woman politician to Ottawa to have a voice from the East Coast that talks about the issues that are impacting people here in Parliament in a way that, a Liberal backbencher doesn't always have lots of opportunities to in Parliament, but also to have a voice at the NDP caucus, which, had a lot of influence in the last two minority parliaments. But we didn't have an NDP member at that caucus table. And so that's something that I want to fix with this election.
Are you sensing frustration with the current government when you're at the doors? Are people, if you listen to the program, there's an awful lot of frustration with the Liberal government as of late. Is that what you're hearing on the doorstep as well, or are the bigger issues, the national, the international issues, the tariffs, dealing with President Trump, is that dominating what they're telling you?
Certainly, there's a huge amount of anxiety and sense of that threat from Donald Trump and the unending chaos of being in his sphere of impact. That is definitely a thing that a lot of people are feeling anxious about. And so in that context, I think by and large, there isn't frustration with the current government. There's rather a sense of wanting the government and the country to be strong and united in response to that. But that doesn't mean that they don't also have a sense that the NDP is a really important factor in Canadian parliamentary democracy. Like, people recognize that under the last two governments, had the NDP not been there, we wouldn't have had millions of seniors already accessing dental care. People appreciate that there is federal funding for school food for the first time in Canada. People are aware of and appreciative of some of the changes to legislation that came through the intervention of the NDP in support of workers. And so folks want both there to be, frankly, mostly they want to not have a government led by Pierre Poilievre, which thankfully is becoming less and less of, a likely outcome. In fact, it now seems very unlikely. But at the same time, they also recognize that, they want a strong local representative and that there's value in having NDP members in Parliament.
The leader of the NDP, Jagmeet Singh, took a lot of heat over the last 3 years for his the coalition, or whatever you want to call it. However, this partnership came together with the Liberals. Are you sensing that people still have that in the front of their mind here when they're talking to you?
I mean, it depends, frankly, how much of Pierre Poilievre's YouTube ads they've consumed, because so much of that, so much of the role of the NDP was completely mischaracterized, especially on YouTube ads that, the Conservatives spent $8 million on advertising in 2023. A lot of that mischaracterizing, calling it a coalition when it was a supply and confidence agreement. So like the NDP was never in government. There was never a bromance. It was never about Jagmeet Singh's pension. Pierre Poilievre is like, one of the best endowed with a parliamentary pension because he's been in Parliament forever. So I'd say that people are not, by and large, frustrated by that, but there's no question that the relentless mischaracterization and messaging by the Conservatives over a number of years, has created a weight on Jagmeet's personal popularity, which the Liberals have been liberated from because Trudeau's no longer there. So a lot of Poilievre's messaging was targeting Trudeau and Singh together. But what I always point out is, what the NDP did with the power of 24, 25 MPs in a parliament of like 341 was classic. It was a classic NDP move. It's how we won Medicare. Use the power that you have to ensure that government is working for Canadians in programs that are as close to universal as possible. And so we weren't the government, but we made advances on pharmacare, on dental care, on school food, which happens to be a file that I know a lot about, on legislation to protect workers, on sick pay. All of these things were gains that were gained by the NDP because we're in it for everyday working Canadians.
I'll preface this next question by saying that polls are polls.
Yep.
And we know what polls are.
Yes.
But that all being said,
Yep.
if the polls hold true, the NDP is going to be in a distant third position and may not have that power to be the and I'm putting quotations around this, the kingmaker this time around. Can the NDP still be effective in a reduced size in a third party place?
I mean, we were actually in fourth party in the last parliament. So we were smaller than the Conservatives, smaller than the Bloc Québécois. So I think it really goes to like the work that the NDP is willing to do and the clarity of our priority for working Canadians, for everyday Canadians who aren't high income or aren't already very attached and very close to the leadership of the Liberals or of the Conservatives. So I think we can absolutely play a very important role. And, we are in a moment where we are seeing our neighbors to the south in a two-party system, really seeing the promise of democracy, like the checks and the balances, the rule of law being so directly challenged. And I've certainly talked with a number of people who are like, we don't want a two-party system. People recognize the value of a multi-party democracy. And in a democracy, opposition is important. And opposition that holds a government to account, opposition that shows up at committees with their research done, opposition that is available for civil society groups to engage with, to make sure that their questions get asked, whether that's about, human rights around the world, whether it's about labor negotiation, whether it's about environmental concerns. And so the NDP plays a very, very important role in democracy in Canada. And I'm hopeful because of the track record of NDP members of parliament in their communities, like their ties to their communities. I'm hopeful because of my own ties in Halifax, where I've been in various community roles over more than 10 years and a journalist before that people are going to see the value in having those sorts of representatives in the next parliament.
Lisa, we talked about tariffs and so on and so forth, but there's other issues that are affecting people in the riding of Halifax. What is the outside of Trump and all of that stuff? Outside of that, what is the question that people want to see answers to the most?
Absolutely, the supply of affordable housing, not just the supply of housing, but the supply of housing that kind of matches with what people are able to earn living in Nova Scotia. So, I mean, two stories from doors that I've knocked on in the past couple of weeks. One was just the other day. I had a bit of a longer chat with a man, maybe about 30 years old. His girlfriend was away, I think, at work. He's working 2 jobs. She's working 2 jobs. They're in a newer building, lovely lobby, it feels very nice, but they are just hustling and working all the time and not seeing a way of having any space in their life for their life, Yeah. So that's one story that really kind of struck me because I had a chance to connect with him a bit more, and because it feels so unfair. And then another story was in an older building that when I was an MLA changed hands. It was like a local owner and it changed to a larger company and the rents went up. It was before we had won the rent cap in Nova Scotia. And an older woman who's lived there for decades is still there. And when I connected with her at the door, she remembered me from when I had met with tenants. And she said, I used to be able to go to bingo. That was the comment. Like, that's how this has affected her. Like, she's just paying rent and paying for groceries and has no space left to go to bingo in her budget. And that just struck me as so sad. And so, again, so unfair and so consequential in various ways for our larger community. Because when people are just working and just working to keep themselves housed, it means that they're not supporting local businesses. It means that they're not volunteering in their community. It means that they're not supporting all the other sectors of our economy other than the housing related part of our GDP. And so I'm very excited that we finally have one new project that opened on federal land in the North End on Maitland Street. And I've met a number of people who live there, and it's really transformative for them. One young couple I can think of, they had been moving every 2 years, and all of a sudden they feel like, I'm not going to have to leave here. Like, I'm not going to be rent-evicted. I'm not going to be priced out. I can actually make some plans for my life, for our family. But also, I met a woman there yesterday, outside that building yesterday, who, has a disability. And she was just talking about everything about how that building was designed, and full credit to Compass Co-op and Cooperative Housing Federation of Canada. She described the bathtub and how it's designed for soaking. And, it's so wonderful to see people really experience the release of stress when their housing is secure. So we need so much more of that, and it's possible.
Lisa Roberts, NDP candidate in the riding of Halifax. Website information is available there?
Absolutely. Yeah, lisaroberts.ndp.ca.
Thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That is Lisa Roberts. We're going to step down, take a break. When we come back, the carbon tax is gone from gasoline. What does it all mean? Patrick Haan from GasBuddy.com will be your guest. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. If you are out and about, or you were driving into work this morning, or if you're just getting ready to head out into the road and you drive by your local gas station, you're going to notice a significant drop in gas prices. Nova Scotia Energy Board, that's the former UARB. They changed their name today, and no, it's not an April Fool's joke. It's an actual thing. The Nova Scotia Energy Board is lowering the minimum price of a liter of self-serve regular gas by 17.4 cents this morning. It's now the minimum price is $1.46.5. Diesel also saw a drop last night it fell to $1.61. The drop is the result of reducing the carbon tax to zero. I know there's some semantics attached to that. Never been eliminated. That needs to be done in Parliament. We haven't had a Parliament since Mark Carney said he was going to drop it. So the number was reduced from whatever it was to now zero. So it technically is still there, but there's no value attached to it, if that makes any sense. 17.4 cents. Please welcome to our program, to put a little context on this, from GasBuddy.com, Patrick Haan. Patrick, how are you?
Good. Good to be with you.
Is 17 right across the country? Is that the number that you're seeing today?
Yeah, it does vary. We are seeing it being passed along pretty significant ways. We are seeing some decreases. Ontario had a user mentioning to me about a 13 cent a liter drop, and I did have to cite that the price of oil did jump up yesterday. So some areas you may not see the full 17.6 cent a liter pause. It may be diluted yesterday by the fact that those oil prices did take a big jump up. And keep in mind, there are other factors just beyond the carbon tax pause that could lead to such small differences. But by and large, it's happening rather quickly. The average Halifax already down a couple of cents a liter. Keep in mind, averages do take a little bit longer to reflect the drop in price because some of this data may be from, say, yesterday. But all in all, things looking rather good.
We're regulated here in the province, and the regulator dropping it to but we're regulated at a minimum, so gas stations can charge more. And there was some concern, and I don't know if you followed this, that our regulator was going to build in a mechanism to allow some of the retailers that purchase gas with the carbon tax attached to it to allow them to try and recoup some of that loss. Have you heard anything along those lines?
Really haven't just yet. but it's obviously, rather early still. We're only, 10 hours or so into the carbon tax being passed along. So I haven't heard a whole lot of those stories yet. I know a lot of Canadians, not just in the Maritimes, but a lot of Canadians are very concerned that some of that would be absorbed by the retail level. But in doing some of these studies, including a study on Manitoba's gas tax holiday that we saw, I think it was back in 2023, retailers generally pass it along very quickly in short order. And that's the beauty of competition, although one could argue that maybe there's not as much competition, and that's thus the regulated markets.
Right. Absolutely. Same thing here. Patrick, we obviously are waiting to see how this all rolls out in a commercial level. We know diesel dropped last night as well, but it'll be a while before those prices are passed along at the grocery store. I would assume the trucking companies will have to work that through their pricing scheme, correct?
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, a lot of the carbon tax pause, some, depending on how it's coded, it may be a line item expense that has to be manually updated with software. So absolutely, it may take some time for companies to simply remove that line item expense because it's been hard coded for so long. It shouldn't be too complicated. Some stations may be able to do it in an automated way rather quickly. It really all depends on the software that runs those point of sale devices. But as I mentioned, that should be within 12 to 24 hours, not much longer than that.
Patrick, we here in Nova Scotia traditionally set our gas prices on Fridays. They're going to do that again. So there is some consternation in the community that, we saw a 17-cent liter drop today or this morning at midnight, but we're going to see an increase on Friday. What's the trend in the market right now? Are we going to see it go up?
Well, keep in mind, this is the time of year. I mean, even aside the carbon tax, which usually increases on the 1st, this is the time of year gas prices go up, not only in Canada, but all of North America and globally as well. A lot of the reason for that is that the Northern Hemisphere is the largest consumer, really North America, the largest consumer of refined products. And so when demand starts to go up, there is a shift in supply and demand that does push prices up. Refineries are also using this time of year before the summer to do maintenance, and they're not producing as much supply as they undergo that maintenance and any upgrades. In addition, we're making the switch from cheaper winter gasoline that contains more butane to summer gasoline, which contains more expensive alkylate. So keep in mind the seasonal factors that push prices up every year happen regardless of if you're in Canada or the United States. So I understand the cynicism, but do keep in mind that those other levers that push prices up this time of year aren't simply going to disappear.
So and oil prices obviously are being impacted by some of the things that are going on globally, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there are no shortage of headlines. And keep in mind, too, the volatility could just be, another 12 hours away as the U.S. and President Trump potentially decide on major tariffs on countries like Canada and Mexico, and could have a chilling effect on the entire North American economy. And that could act to lower prices down the road if it does undermine the strength of the economy. And this broader trade war is very worrisome. In addition, we haven't even mentioned the possibility of ratcheting up pressure on countries like Iran and Venezuela. President Trump in the U.S. also potentially mentioning adding secondary tariffs to Russian crude oil, which is largely behind the big jump in oil prices yesterday, as Russia is a major oil producer. So policies from the U.S. can have a significant impact, and that's something to keep an eye on as well.
I don't like living in the world of what ifs, but we have to these days with all of the stuff that's going on at the White House. The president of the United States said a few months ago that he would add a 10% tariff on Canadian oil heading to the United States as part of this broader package. There's reciprocal tariffs that we still don't know anything about. What kind of an impact will a broad-based tariff that the president's talking about have on oil prices?
Well, it certainly could have a chilling effect. I think the bigger concern about tariffs right now is there's been a lot of discussion. President Trump may go a little bit more aggressive. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, he had been promising potentially lower tariffs, and now within the last 48 hours, some outlets, some reporters in the U.S. reporting that they may be more aggressive, which could have a chilling effect on the United States economy, which could slow down or throw their economy into a recession, which could essentially offset some of the pain from tariffs. So that's going to be very interesting to watch. The balance there of economic pain versus the sheer cost of tariffs could be mostly offset if the tariffs are more aggressive than expected.
Patrick, we're out of time. I appreciate yours.
Thanks for having me.
That is Patrick Haan, the head of petroleum analysis at gasbuddy.com. 17+ cent a liter drop in gasoline in Nova Scotia at midnight. Blake is going to update us on the very latest in the news coming up. And when we come back, one of the news items today, minimum wage is up 50 cents an hour. Not enough, according to Dr. Christine Saulnier. We'll speak with Christine after the break. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand along with you for the remainder of the day and remainder of the week. Todd away on vacation. He'll be back in a couple of weeks, taking a well-deserved rest after a long go for the last few months. He's going to take some time off. He'll be back near the end of the month towards the election dates, and we'll look forward to his return. That being said, lots happening today on the 1st of April, and none of it has anything to do with April Fools. This is all legit stuff, people. We don't do April Fools here. Anyway, we saw the gas price drop because of the removal of the zeroing of the carbon tax on a liter of gasoline. It dropped 17 cents. Also factored into that was a 1% drop in HST. That is across the board. HST down a single point, and the other couple of things. The contribution limit, I think, is up $3,000 today. That's from the provincial government. And minimum wage was increased today by 50 cents. I almost said a liter. 50 cents an hour as of the date today, which is now $15.70. And we're looking at, I think it's 80 cents in October to raise the minimum wage to $16.50 here in Nova Scotia. Now, I would imagine anybody that is currently working on minimum wage isn't going to be upset at seeing their salary increase by that much. But many, including our next guest from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives-Nova Scotia, say that it's just not enough. And that aforementioned guest is Dr. Christine Saulnier, and she joins me on the telephone this morning. Christine, how are you?
Good morning. I'm well.
I guess that's the first question. It's not enough, is it?
It isn't enough. 15 cents an hour, bringing it to $15.70 is not enough. And there are different ways that we could talk about why it's not enough. One of them is looking at what our living wage calculations are. So for Halifax, $28.30 is a long way away from $15.70, and that gap has been growing despite these small increases. You know, when we think about what's happening in terms of the cost of living and who we're talking about here, we are talking about low-wage workers. We're talking about workers who are spending a very significant portion of their income on rent. That's swallowed immediately. I mean, it's one thing to look at the sort of overall provincial picture on inflation, but when you dig into those numbers and you look a little deeper, rent is well beyond what this increase means for people.
I did some quick math before the show started this morning, and we took $15.70 an hour at a 40-hour work week, which for some probably isn't even attainable. Most of them are 35, but I ran 40 hours at $628 a week times 52 weeks divided by 12 months, it's $2,721, and that's gross income a month. Now, if you take 30% of that, it works out to $816 a month, and that's what they suggest you should be at for rent. I will challenge people to find a rent at $816 in Halifax.
Exactly. And I mean, we know that this group is paying at least 50% of their income. And even at 50%, looking at that math, it's still, you can't square it. When you look at the rentals that are available in the market now, and because the rent cap really doesn't cover once there's a new rental that goes into the market, that can go anywhere. But even looking at the rent cap of 5%, this first increase is just to the average CPI. It's not to the average rental increase, but the cap is 5%. This was a 4.1% increase at 50 cents an hour. It really doesn't cover people like the COLA. Tying it to inflation, it's important to say because it's supposed to mean that people are supported to afford that inflationary increase. But even if it did, people would still be running in place. So it's really, I'm sure, welcome, but really not enough.
Christine, what do you say to the business owners? We're going to speak with the Restaurant Association tomorrow about this and obviously the other economic pressures that are on us these days. But that being said, when I talk to business owners, when I talk to the Convenience Store Association and to the Restaurant Association and those businesses that deal a lot in employees and minimum wage, they say that this is counterproductive because it increased costs. They don't hire as many people or they pass the cost on to their customer.
Well, when we look at the evidence around increases to minimum wages, we just haven't seen the results that business owners continue to say. We know that obviously businesses have to make choices and that what they pay their workers is obviously part of that choice. But it is short-sighted to just suggest that means they're going to increase their prices. There are savings if they were to be paying a decent wage to workers. Those workers would be staying longer in the job. You're lowering your recruitment costs, you're lowering your training costs, you're lowering all of those costs that go with workers who may not be able to bring their best to the workplace because they can't afford a decent house. They may even be living in a tent. They can't afford a decent food. And so, it is for our business owners to think about what it means for these workers to be earning such low wages. And it is about obviously making some choices. Look, the tariffs will have a much more significant impact than any 50-cent increase to the minimum wage. And there are other things, obviously, that the government can be doing to be thinking through what those impacts are. And as we always say, the minimum wage increase needs to be significant enough to support workers to afford essentials. That is not the case currently. And of course, there is more that our government can be doing. I mean, we have criticized some of these tax cuts because that will blow a hole in our revenue and actually won't help these low-wage workers much at all. So, governments could be making different choices as well, but this increase to the minimum wage and the significant increase needs to happen. Businesses have had it in their favor for a very long time. We have some of the weakest labor standards in the country. They have such flexibility to make choices around workers. It's time for them to understand how the dots are connected here. The other thing is we have a public universal healthcare system. This takes an impact on people's mental health, on people's physical health. That has a cost too. We're all in this together, and there's no businesses employing workers who don't need customers who can afford their goods and services. Let's connect those two.
Your blog that I was reading on your website this morning suggests that $20 an hour is where minimum wage should be. That's a substantial increase from $15.70.
It is, but it's still nowhere near our living wage.
Right.
So, $20 an hour would help. And as we say, this isn't just on the shoulders of businesses either. We can expand public services if we have the revenue to do that, and making sure that people are paying less out of pockets for prescription drugs, for rent. There are ways that we really haven't been building the public housing that is actually affordable outside of the market. We haven't provided enough rent subsidies. We haven't done enough to expand public services. Childcare is another example. All of that actually supports our workers as well. It goes together. We can't have continuing down this road of these very low wages. I don't know what's to come. We hope that the government will step up here as we figure out what the impact of what may be coming in terms of tariffs. But here we are. Our businesses need workers, and our workers need to be paid a decent wage.
Christine, I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
That is Dr. Christine Saulnier from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. They suggest that $15.70 not near enough. They say $20 is a good starting point. $23, I think, change is the living wage in HRM. I don't know if I could live on $23 an hour. I really don't know if I could. I don't know how people live on $15.70 an hour. I don't know how young couples with children function in today's world. If you're a single person, by yourself, single person, are you relegated now to roommates until you're 40 or 50. We hear a lot during the and I'm looking at the screens, and I've seen just about all the party leaders this morning. Blanchette's on there now. I just saw Polyev on there. We've heard from Mark Carney. We've heard from Jagmeet Singh. Everybody's, talking about building homes, building housing, the dream of home ownership in Canada. I don't even know if that's there anymore. It certainly isn't here in Nova Scotia. What is the average price for a home in HRM? Was it 500 and I'm just picking a number. I think it's like 550,000, and I stand to be corrected. I know Vanessa's fingers are moving, so she's probably gonna look it up for me. But it's well over $500,000, the average home, right? So, or median maybe is the right way to say that. Who can afford just the down payment to get a mortgage if the bank would even look at you? And if you're a young family, 2 incomes, and Vanessa tells me it's over 600,000, and that's probably HRM Central. But anyway, you get my point. Is if you're a young family and you have kids or teenagers who eat like teenagers eat, I really don't know how you afford. I really do, and I'm not being a smart aleck here. I really don't know how you do it. Like, I really don't. I'm well past my teenage years, and my grocery bill has gone up significantly. It's not something I should be laughing at, but it's quite funny that I do eat a lot. But I really don't know how you do it. I think, folks, that we need to have a significant reckoning here. I think that A does not meet B anymore. Average salaries don't meet average home prices. Average salaries don't meet average rent. The math doesn't work. And I worry about where we're going. We already have a number of homeless encampments in HRM. Is that just going to get worse? End of rant. We're going to stop down and take another break. When we come back, we talked about this yesterday with the mayor. HRM has awarded a contract to a Toronto-based company to provide e-scooters. Over 2 local guys that can do it and are doing it right now. We're going to speak to one of those guys when we come back. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in a minute. All right, we like doing follow-ups here on the Todd Veinotte Show. When we talk about something and maybe we get a little bit of traction on a story, then we try to reach out and give you another perspective on it. Todd's very good at it. I'm still learning, but that's okay. And Vanessa is the master at it, and she really runs the show, as we all know. That being said, yesterday we had our hour-long discussion with Mayor Fillmore. We broached a number of different things, but one of the things I asked the mayor about was a story that I came across last week, I think it was, about e-scooter rentals in Halifax. Now, anybody that has been down on the waterfront knows that this has been going on down there for quite some time, and our next guest will probably tell us exactly how long it's been going on. But that being said, I read a story that there was a tender that was put out to provide e-scooters for HRM, and that tender was awarded to a company in Toronto over 2 local people that had bid on it. That always raises the dander in Dan, will say. And so I'm very pleased to welcome into the studio today to tell us a little bit about it, from the owner of, the founder of, the head chef and bottle washer at HFX e-scooters, and that's Max Rastelli. Max, how are you?
Hey, Dan. Thanks very much for your interest in this story.
So tell me a little bit about how this whole thing rolled out. The HRM put a call out for tenders for what exactly?
It did. So the tender went out back in August, and it was a tender to enter into a pilot program. So HRM is interested in going into a 2-year pilot project or pilot program. So the tender came out in August, and there were 5 bidders. And really what enabled that pilot project was a new bylaw. So HRM introduced a new bylaw last year, M300, that enabled this whole process.
What is M300 in layman's terms?
So M300 does a couple of things. One, it takes the provincial regulations and it tweaks them for individual users riding e-scooters in HRM. So that's the first thing it does. It regulates riding e-scooters.
Sure.
The second thing it did is it set the foundation for a pilot program where it also regulates exactly how shared micromobility operators, which is what we've functioned as the last 6 years, it really regulates what those shared micromobility operators and how they can operate in HRM through a pilot project.
Okay, and this would be to move forward with more rentals, or is it just the project to see how well it works?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's to see how well it works and how it can be right for Halifax. It is very common in this industry for cities and municipalities to start with a formal pilot project. Some people might say, well, geez, we've been doing this for 6 years. We introduced it to Halifax in 2019.
I see the scooters on the sidewalks now already.
That maybe unofficially we were a pilot project, but we never had a formal contract with the HRM. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the idea was to test the waters before we expanded any further.
Exactly. And I fully expect, because now we're going into a 7th year of the service in Halifax at our HRM, that I fully expect that after the pilot program that you will probably see a longer-term contract for probably more than one operator, a multi-year contract. Yeah.
So that being said, you put your paperwork in, you followed all of the rules, and they awarded it to a Toronto company.
Yeah, and I guess what's disappointing is that we did bid, and we were technically compliant. So all the requirements of that pilot program, whether it's helmets on scooters, whether it's sidewalk detection, whether it's parking corrals so we can better control where people leave them. I mean, we were all technically compliant there. And we felt like we really had a strong bid. Plus, we also felt like how we had that local factor, right? And HRM was certainly at liberty. They had the option to select 2 operators for the pilot program. They chose not to. They chose to go with a single operator. So obviously that's disappointing, because that decision really effectively puts 2 local businesses out of business.
That was my next question. What does that mean for you now moving forward? Are you done?
We're in a slightly different position perhaps than Move Scooters. The other operator, Move Scooters, I think they've announced publicly that they're going to shut down and move to another city. We definitely need to pivot,
right?
And we've kind of saw this coming for a while, even though we were only officially announced or informed last week by HRM. So the bylaw M300, which I mentioned, does allow businesses, for example, to operate, that is, starting rentals and ending rentals on non-municipal property. So where we've had a location on the Halifax waterfront, for example, that's considered non-municipal property. So we're allowed to do some business down there, and we're also exploring other locations outside of the HRM.
I get a lot of questions about e-scooters, and you're probably the best person that I can ask this. You mentioned sidewalk detection. I have a number of callers that call here frequently that are concerned that these things are going to run people off the sidewalks. How are they prevented from doing that? How is a user prevented from doing that?
Yeah, well, so what we've seen now in the industry is every year it's getting better, right? It's evolving, and we're seeing newer and better technology come out. And that's exactly what we're seeing here, for example, with whether it's sidewalk detection or whether it's putting helmets on each and every scooter. And also there's going to be e-bikes in this pilot project. So the sidewalk detection can be done a few ways. One is GPS location, which is not very accurate at all. The other is the ability for the vehicle to detect, let's say, the rhythm of riding on a sidewalk.
The expansion joints.
Boom, 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 that sort of thing. And the latest technology really involves AI. And that's the technology that we proposed, where we have an AI, artificial intelligence, a box that has been taught, if you will. It has a camera on it, and it uses that camera to look at where you're riding. And if it thinks you're on a sidewalk, then it can set alarms. You can control the throttle. You can do all sorts of things. But I don't know what Bird proposed, but we proposed AI technology for that sidewalk detection.
I mentioned off the top that we talked to the mayor about this yesterday, and he said that it didn't make sense to him, and that he was going to perhaps take a look at this contract. That we only can hold him at his word. That being said, it may be a little bit of good news at the end of this for you, depending on how that goes.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I don't know if it's going to be easy at all to turn the ship around.
Right.
From what I understand, HRM now does have a signed contract with Bird. They've gone through their procurement process. So I don't know how easy or difficult that might be. I guess if anything, I hope that can come out of all this is that perhaps in the future, for HRM, for future procurement, that maybe they put a little more weight on supporting local small businesses, right, in that selection criteria. As an entrepreneur, anyone, if HRM is trying to encourage entrepreneurs, one, to stay here or two, to come here,
right,
I think wouldn't it be nice if we knew that they had our backs, right?
Absolutely. Didn't feel like they had your back a whole lot. Anyway, we wish you the very best. We're out of time. Right. If you're down the Halifax waterfront and you walk by the HFX scooters, go take one for a spin. I'm sure Max will set you up.
We'll be there.
Max, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Max Rastelli of Halifax e-scooters, our guest. We're going to stop down, take a break. Might be something you want to talk about when we come back from the news. Blake's going to update us on what's going on in the world. On the other side of it, we're going to throw open the telephone lines. Time for the open hour. 902-405-6000. 902-405-6000 is the number. The open hour is next. All right. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand, and thank you for all the cards and letters from yesterday's show. I appreciate each and every one of them. Some people thought I was being a bit facetious saying that it's my favorite hour. It absolutely is my favorite hour. I love talking to people on the open hour. 902-405-6000 is the number, and if you want to talk to me or to the listeners, here's a perfect opportunity. The lines are wide open. Lots to talk about today. My goodness, Mark Carney loses a candidate in Paul Chang after less than 24 hours before defending Mr. Chang and his comments about bounties and candidates. Paul Chang stepping down, and I just saw during the break that a Conservative candidate has, this is on the CTV News website, by the way, a Conservative candidate who once voiced his support for public hangings, or even joking that former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau should receive the death penalty, will no longer be running to represent the party. Mr. Mark McKenzie is his name, is a city councillor in Windsor, Ontario, was running to represent the riding of Windsor-Tecumseh Lakeshore in 2022, made remarks in a now defunct comedy podcast called the Mark and Chris Podcast. Content has been largely wiped since. So the Conservative Party finding that out, I guess, over the last 24 hours, and then turfed him. So both parties, both leading parties anyway, have lost candidates in the last 24 hours. Something you may want to talk about. 902-405-6000 is the number. We talked just recently about minimum wage. $15.70 an hour is the increase today by 50 cents. 80 cents in October, going up to $16.50. You heard from the Centre for Policy Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, and Christine Saulnier, who says that that's not near enough. We need to see at least $20, if not $23, which is the living wage in Halifax. I've got two questions, and I'm interested in hearing from two different groups on this. One, if you're a worker, if you're somebody that is working for or near minimum wage, is this enough? I ran the numbers the last hour. It's 30% of a full-time salary at $15.70 an hour, which is the rent affordability calculating number. It's the rule of thumb that everybody uses for rent at 30%. It's $816 a month. I challenge you to find suitable accommodations in HRM at $816 a month. Now, I'm sure you can, and I did do a little bit of digging through various sites, and I did see a couple of rooms in people's apartments or houses that they're renting at $750 or $800 or $850 a month, but not many. Is it enough? And I'd also like to hear from some employers out there today that are listening to us. I know you're busy, but I'd like to hear from you. If you deal in workers or employees near or at minimum wage, and a $1.30 increase this year in minimum wage, what kind of impact does that have on your business? We hear from the policymakers. We heard from Lisa Roberts about it earlier today. We heard from Christine Saulnier about it. But I'd like to hear from the front line. What does it mean to your business? to see an increase of 50 cents today and 80 cents in October. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Let's begin the open hour with David. David, how are you?
Good, sir. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind today?
Well, you know what, Dan? I'm just sitting at my desk here at work, and
hey, we won't tell your boss.
My conversation yesterday. Well, yeah, really. He thinks I'm working.
Yeah.
I just want to. I won't use the word funny how we had the conversation yesterday, but there's another shooting.
It's ironic, I think, is the word, right?
Yeah, ironic. I'm talking to the mayor yesterday, and I really, Jim called, and thank you, Jim. I know you're listening, and I think me and you are obviously the only ones that get on this radio and talk about this and want something done about this. Last night there was a shooting in a subdivision that I'll use the word, Dan, maybe you wouldn't think there'd be a shooting there, but anyway,
Montebello, absolutely, yep.
Yeah, Montebello's no. Anyway, it is what it is. But 5 shootings in 5 days.
Yep.
3 in Dartmouth, 1 on St. Margaret's Bay Road, and 1 in Dartmouth and Montebello.
Yeah.
So there's 5 people shot in 4 days
since last Monday. Yeah.
The mayor's. Right. Yeah. Well, exactly. I know I'm right, and it's concerning. It's concerning to me, my neighborhood, and a lot of people around. And we're starting to get a little itchy and agitated. And instead of walking around Province House, or we'll use City Hall with signs about housing and this and that, we're going to walk around with signs with guns on it saying you need to stop the violence, because this is not acceptable. And his answers yesterday, Dan, were not acceptable. How dare you come on the show and answer the way about people with COVID were tied up and some of that has it, and mental illness. No, it doesn't, Mayor. That's a small percentage. There's a drug war in this city. There's violence in this city. And then to come on and say that we have body cams. What's that going to do, Dan? Show up to a dead person laying in a driveway with a body cam on? That you have a body cam on? What is that going to do? Nothing. He didn't have an answer yesterday, and he has no answers. And I think it's time the chief of police get on this show, or Tony Mancini, who I know is probably listening, who posted it last night, get on this show because he's on the police commission, I believe, and we need some answers. I think you need to have a show way ahead of all these other things that are popping up, and have somebody in the hot seat. Maybe something you can take on in the 2 weeks you're here before Todd gets back.
No, absolutely. I totally agree with you, David. And we have and will continue to reach out to the chief of police to have Chief McLean come on here and discuss these issues with you. Let me ask you this question, David. If you were the chair of the police board today, if David was the new chair of the police board, what would be your solution, or what would be part of the solution to solve this problem? What would you tell police to do?
A task force against violence in our city right away. An emergency meeting right away, as a supervisor, as the police chief, put that hat on, whatever. An emergency meeting with the mayor, with the council, or whoever represents the police commission, to see what we could do funding-wise, see what we can do foot-wise, whatever it takes. Vehicle-wise, to have a task force and up some kind of service, if you want to call it. Maybe that's not the word, but this got to be nipped. We're not doing that. Oh, you as a police commissioner, if I was, I would take individuals from each area and make that force and make that task force. I don't think the job's being done right, Dan. I don't think internally it's being handled properly. I think every time one of these happens, it's, if you have any video or anything, know anything about it, call the police. That's their reply. And I'm telling you, Dan, have you heard of anything from Arndale? Have you heard of the 3 shootings in Dartmouth? Have you heard anything from the house shooting on Leahy Road? Have you heard? No.
No, and nothing. I can tell you from my perspective on things is that it is frustrating, because we try to dig that information out and we run up against the it's an ongoing investigation. We can't comment any further. Happens all the time.
So you know what? So they're not giving you the information, and they're using the excuse about it's a pending investigation. You know what? If you want our help from video and you want our help from phone calls, then you need to be straightforward and honest with us as a community. That's the first step. And the second step is you need to take wherever you have a flood. And I don't want to hear the excuse about personnel. We don't have enough. That's not true. That is not true. You see them sitting in parking lots. You see them sitting by stop signs. You see the two of them talking together in a parking lot. Whatever. That's not true. And, this is not going to stop. And you use the word violence, Dan, because it is violent. This is a shooting last night that shot the house, shot the guy, was not random. All these shootings so far are not random. What kind of little signal is that telling you? They're marked. There's somebody here. Is it by the same person, same gang? Who knows? But you know what? If I was the commissioner, I would take lead. Would I come on your show? Maybe when I would come on your show if I had a policy or I had something in place. But the first step is to get that in place. And that is not happening. And I'm very, very disgusted at the mayor's answers yesterday, blaming it on COVID, blaming it on people being housed up and frustrated, blaming it on no money, blaming it on mental health. You heard him. Mm-hmm. That's not the right answer. And that's a lame excuse from a mayor who's supposed to be in charge of our city. And then coming back with putting body cams. Are you serious? That's not the problem. And is there going to be more? Yes, and God forbid. But where's that going to happen? Beside your building on Roby Street? Right beside the mayor's house? Maybe right beside the police commissioner's house. But you look at the map, it's not one area. It's scattered across our city.
Right.
There was a shooting that's not even mentioned on Beaverbank Road. There was a shooting on Walker Drive on Friday evening. That's not even mentioned in the media because nothing happened. You heard them, Dan. You're in the media. Mm-hmm. What did they do? They closed the area to public, but it's no threat. Do you know what that is?
No.
When they say that, they close the area, don't want anybody in there, no traffic, but it doesn't really pose a threat. That could be anything from a gun to a bomb, whatever.
Yeah.
But that's my whole point here, Dan, is that we need somebody in that seat. And you have councillors on the hot seat next Monday. I'm going to be your first caller because I'm going to do the same thing to them. And I'm going to keep on harking about it. And I'm going to keep on talking about it. And I know people get on your show, the same people every day that talk about the parliament and who's prime minister and the guy down south where I really don't care about. I care about what's happened here in this community. We're in trouble. And something drastic is going to happen. They've been youth kids shot here. And just before I go, why don't you dig up the success of the arrest ratings? And I'll give you an example. 3 years ago, there was a vehicle that got shot going down Mount Everett Road, smashed into a lamp pole, never heard nothing of it, and the person got shot in the vehicle. There's multiple ones. And you don't hear any of the arrests. Maybe they pluck up one and make themselves look good, but that's a pretty piss poor rating.
Okay, David, appreciate your time, sir. Look forward to your calls. All right, 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. The open hour continues after the break. All right, welcome back. 902-405-6000 is the telephone number if you want to join the conversation. This is the open hour. You can chat about whatever it is on your mind, just like John's going to do. John, how are you?
Hi, good morning, Dan. Thanks for having me on.
What's on your mind?
I want to get the fine print out on Mark Carney. Okay. And just off the record, I'm friends with Todd, outside the show, and Todd actually backs me up on this one, too. But one thing that no one's really talking about, and it was in the 2021 Liberal election platform, Dan, have you heard of the Century Initiative?
No.
Okay, so what the Century Initiative is, it's a man named Mark Wiseman, who's an advisor to Mark Carney. The Century Initiative wants the population of Canada to go to 100 million people by the year 2100. And a lot of people have missed this in the fine print. So if Carney stays in office and that, they talk about cutting back the numbers of people in that, but it's not the case. They want the rapid population growth.
Well, that was in the 20. You said, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get this. It was in the last election platform?
Correct. It was in the Liberal Party platform.
Is it in this platform? Has it been announced yet?
I'm pretty sure. I think it has, but I know Poilievre has come out.
I know Poilievre has come out against it, but I don't recall Carney talking about immigration at all yet, to be honest. And I'm also going to suggest that there was a lot of things in the 21 platform that aren't going to be in this one.
Maybe, but the point is, Carney is heavily involved with this Century Initiative, and what had happened, Dan. I want you to think about something.
So, I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm trying to get this sorted in my brain. Mark Carney was a financial advisor to the Prime Minister, was he not?
Financial, economic, and amongst other things.
Yeah, is immigration in that file?
It's not about that. It's a separate thing of who he's involved with.
Okay, so Mark Carney was a financial advisor to the Prime Minister, but you suggest that he's responsible for the Century Initiative.
Correct. Just everybody out there just listening to me. Let me explain what it is. But the reason being and why they wanted this, who got rich during this rapid population growth? It was the building owners and the corporations, because it caused real estate and rents to skyrocket.
Okay.
That's what's going on behind the scenes with this rapid population growth. Everybody that's listening out there, just do some research on it and everything. Like
I had $1 every time I heard somebody say, "Do your research, John." I would be a millionaire myself.
Yeah, all I know is I'll take it with a grain of salt. Even Todd backs me up on this.
Well, then that's Todd's prerogative. I find it a bit of a stretch to suggest that somebody that was advising the Prime Minister on finances was responsible for immigration.
No, it's a separate business entity. But anyway, everybody out there, just look up the Century Initiative.
Looking forward to it, John. I'm going to read about it tonight.
Okay, bye.
Bye. 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. And I'm certainly not going to be an apologist for Mark Carney. I think that Mark Carney has a lot of things that are coming to light that may not paint him in the best light at all. That being said, he's not responsible for every single thing that Justin Trudeau did or that the Liberal government did. If you'd have told me that Sean Fraser was responsible for that, I might have bought into it because he was the Minister of Immigration. But to say that Mark Carney's responsible for every decision that Justin Trudeau made as the Prime Minister, it's a bit of a stretch, isn't it? From what I've been gathering and reading and listening to and watching, the Prime Minister had a lot of advisors and maybe didn't listen to a lot of people. Maybe he did. Maybe Mark Carney did advise him on immigration. I don't know. It just feels like we can't blame Justin Trudeau anymore, so we're going to blame the guy that used to work for him. Does that make any sense to you? Maybe it does. 902-405-6000. Where are we? Let's go to Michael. Michael, how are you?
How you doing? Thanks for taking the call, Dave.
Haven't heard from you for a while, Michael. How are you?
Not bad, buddy. Not bad at all. Just trying to see some sense in this election that's going on now. And I just want to say thank you. You made my day. I listened to that Lisa Robertson speaking this morning. She told you the plain truth about why Jagmeet Singh backed the Liberal Party in the last government in this country and the benefits that he's responsible for pushing that affects a lot of people that couldn't afford dental care, diabetes care, and it was Jagmeet Singh who forced the government to pass those laws. But you get people calling up saying, "Oh, he's just waiting to go on his pension." And Scott, I told Todd, facts check what he's worth. His net worth is, well, that was a shocker for Todd, but it wasn't for a little pension. He wanted to keep the government going to prepare them for what's coming, but the way things go together in this country, Trump come along and everything went up in the air. But just a big thank you to you and your station, Dan, for having that lady on. The people that got her running in her riding, whatever riding she's running in, they're very lucky people. They better appreciate her. I'll talk to you later, buddy.
Thanks, Michael. 902-405-6000, and we will venture to try and get as many candidates on as we can, as you can appreciate. The Prime Minister calling such a short election campaign makes that difficult for us. There are still some ridings in HRM, as I understand it, that haven't even nominated a candidate yet. So we will do our best. We will try to bring a number of voices on here to try and cover as many bases as we can. And that's our pledge to you here on the program. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. We welcome Shelley to the program. Shelley, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
You were asking about employers' comments with regards to minimum wage.
Yes.
I am a small farm towards Annapolis Valley.
Mm-hmm.
I have a meat plant and a certified kitchen. And I have some part-time employees, one that comes into my facility and one that works at the market, and they make $20 an hour.
Okay.
Frankly, if people are trying to live on $15.70 or whatever the prior minimum wage was, I have absolutely no clue how they'd be able to do it.
Right. I don't get it. I really don't. I really feel awful for them.
I feel awful. Now, as a business owner myself,
Right.
and feeding livestock, I don't even make close to $15 an hour, but
yeah, no doubt.
I'm certainly not about to attempt to get some reliable people. If I was only offered $15 an hour to go and do something, I'm not entirely sure it would be worth my while to do so. And pay bills.
Shelley, if you had the government mandated that you had to put $1 an hour onto your employees' wages, how big of an impact would that have on your bottom line of your business?
Well, I mean, $1 an hour is not that much. It really is just not that much.
Yeah.
So I'm paying on average of about $5.50 more than minimum wage.
Yep.
I've been paying that for well over a year. I do know that if small, not even small businesses, if the customer service people like grocery stores and things were making more, it definitely would end up falling down the line and increase prices.
Right.
But we also have to recognize that having done that, it could affect the bottom line with regards to taxes as well. So if people are actually working rather than perhaps receiving some assistance of some sort or less assistance, I should think that would affect the bottom line with the government as well, in a positive end of things, because they've got people working.
Shelley, appreciate your call.
Thank you.
902-405-6000 is the number. We've got to stop and take a break for the news. The open hour continues on the other side. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. It's the open hour. A couple of open lines for you. 902-405-6000 if you'd like to get in, talk about whatever it is on your mind today. Could it be minimum wage? Could it be the HST reduction? Could it be the oncoming or potential of tariffs tomorrow? I mean, we've seen the President of the United States move this off, kick it down the road twice now. Could it be a third time tomorrow? And, of course, the carbon tax not removed. Want to use the right vernacular. The carbon tax reduced to zero today. Apparently, you can't take the tax off without an act of Parliament. And as y'all well know, we haven't had the Parliament since Mark Carney said he was going to get rid of this. So the number is zero now. It's semantics, I get it, but I just want to be accurate. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. We welcome Bernie to the program. Bernie, how are you?
Good morning, Dan. How you doing?
I'm good. What's on your mind today?
Good. I was just talking. I watched the recent polls for this federal election, and Mark Carney is way out in front, and the Conservatives are behind. But they got the NDP way down the poll. Can you tell me, for the life of me, why the people of this country, the ordinary people, I don't mean about the oligarchs that Carney and Polly have to represent, why the ordinary people in this country are not giving Jagmeet Singh and the NDP a good good measure of support in this country. Well, what's the reason for it?
I think the simple answer to that one, Bernie, is that they are not happy with the supply management agreement that he signed with the Liberals to keep them in power.
Well, the thing is he had 22 seats.
Yep.
The Conservatives had 120, the Liberals had 167. What kind of legislation did Polyev pass, call for to help alleviate the grocery prices, the gas prices, and everything over the last couple of years? Jagmeet Singh was in there, and he got dental care for seniors that couldn't afford it. He went after it. He brought the grocery CEOs to the table. He went and protected workers' rights across the country. Yet you got all these unions out here supporting the Tories and Liberals. What's wrong with the Canadian people? I don't know where they're coming from or what they're looking at. Is it because this country is built up so much on a patronage system that people haven't got the right to really freely think anymore? Okay, thanks, Dan.
Have a good one, Bertie. 902-405-6000. I really think that's going to be reflected at the ballot box this time. I don't think that Canadians of many political persuasions outside of the New Democrats really like that whole supply management deal. I mean, when in a minority parliament, usually a third party like the NDP is the party that has the power, but they literally signed that power over to the Liberals because they said they weren't going to bring them down. It wasn't on a case by case basis, even though we would go continually to Jagmeet Singh and say, look, the Prime Minister wants to do this or the Prime Minister wants to do this. Will you support him? And it was like, well, if they do this, and I get it's give and take, but I really believe that the drop in the polls, and I will preface it by saying polls are polls, that Canadians were not pleased with that, and now the NDP is feeling their wrath, for lack of a better term. Donna, welcome to the program.
Oh, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I agree 100% with your first caller about all these crimes and how it's making people nervous.
Right.
And that wasn't the main reason I called, but
Sure.
I just wanted to say that. And Mark Carty, your second caller there, I do agree with what he said, too. Boy, I'm in an agreeable mood today.
Look at that, Donna. Wow. Maybe we should all go buy lottery tickets or something today.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe I will. And I think everybody should give thanks to Pierre Poilievre for getting the carbon tax dropped, because he was the one for the last couple of years, axe the tax, and the Liberals took that over because they knew that people were annoyed with the carbon tax. So thank you very much, Pierre Poilievre, for doing that. And regarding Mark Carney, the other book that the other man said to read, there's another one out called Values. And I'll end this. Do you know who Mark Carney's advisor is? The one that he hired as his advisor?
He's got a bunch, but I don't know who you're referring to.
One is Mark Wiseman, who, check it out,
okay,
who was the guy that wants 100 million people in Canada.
Yeah.
So Mark Carney is
in
still
75 years, Donna.
Wiseman. Pardon me?
In 75 years.
I know, but never. Do you think Canada is there room for 100 million people in Canada?
I got an email from a listener who did the math, Donna, and it's a 1.3% increase in population over the next 75 years. That's not a lot.
But where are you going to put these people?
Well, I mean, it's going to, obviously, if you're only growing your population by 1% or 1.5% a year, then the housing can keep up. It's just this influx that we've had over the last 5 years that's really impacting things, right?
Well, you need an awful lot more doctors and nurses and school teachers and whatnot. I don't know where you'd put 100 million. And they're going to start bringing in, anyway, I'll be dead by 2100 anyway, so I won't have to worry about it. But there's no way Canada can house 100 million people, like I said. But anyway, that's their plans. And they're coming from Africa and from here and there. Like,
is it purely immigration? Is the and I'm gonna admit I haven't read it the whole thing, but is the Century Plan entirely immigration, or is it internal birth rate?
No. Mostly immigration. But anyway, that's neither here. I'm all for immigration, but
Well, you just said you weren't.
Now, the ones coming in, I want ones that are screened.
Ones what?
No, immigrants. When immigrants are coming in now.
Okay, so okay, Donna, I appreciate
I'm
it.
all for immigrants.
I get it. Yep.
But ones that are screened and ones that will work and have job skills. Because right now, in hotels and whatnot, taxpayers are paying for thousands and thousands that are still living in hotels, and we've got almost 300,000 Canadians living out on the streets. You know, help get our Canadian people housed first, then start bringing in screened and whatnot immigrants. Now that's, maybe that's, I don't know, that's just my opinion.
Fair enough, Don. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. The open hour continues. All opinions welcome here, even if I don't necessarily agree nor understand how it all works, but I'll do my very level best to try and figure it out. Where are we going next? Vanessa, there we are. Let's go to Glenn. Glenn, how are you?
Yes, good, Dan. Thank you for taking my call. I spoke to you and the mayor yesterday about scooters.
Sure.
So listening to the owner today.
Yep. Max.
It seems like the bylaw, they changed the bylaw for him. They tweaked it a bit.
Well, they didn't change the bylaw for him. They changed the bylaw, yes.
Yes. So, I hate to see a private owner, lose any money or anything, but I'm wondering, did they subsidize this guy because it's a pilot project?
He's not in it.
He's not in it.
No, he lost the bid. He lost the bid to that was the whole story. He lost the bid to an Ontario company.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So he's still there, though.
He is, because there's a provision in the bylaw that says he can rent on non-HRM lands, and because he's located on the waterfront, where he's located on the waterfront's non-HRM property, so he can still rent there. But he was excluded from the pilot project in favor for an Ontario company to come in here and do it.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought you said one company left.
Well, one company did. There were two that were operating here, and both bid on this pilot project, and the city didn't take either of them.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so I misunderstood that.
All good.
I'm still wondering who is liable for if anyone gets hit on the sidewalk. I mean, it's like the Wild Wild West up around where I live here, with a lot of younger people are driving these things 4 at a time on the sidewalks. And I haven't got any direct information, and I think the city should know. That should be one question that they should be able to answer right away, is who is responsible if someone gets hurt?
Great question, Glenn. I appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to keep calling.
And you'll know the number, 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Let's see if we can squeeze one more in here before we hit the break and welcome Sean to the program. Sean, how are you?
Good, Dan. How you doing?
Good. What's on your mind today?
Well, I want to talk about the carbon tax, but since everyone's weighing on this Century thing and Mark Wiseman, I called last week about this. And yes, Century is 100% immigration. They don't do anything with birth rate. It's all about immigration. So that being said, back when we had Sean Fraser as immigration minister, I think it was 2021-22, he put forth the plan of 500,000 new immigrants a year. That plan comes directly from Century, who Century was advising Sean Fraser at the time of this 500,000 people. 500,000 people a year is the target that Century sets out to hit in order to achieve the 100 million people by the year of 2100. So now we have Mark Carney, who has appointed Mark Wiseman as one of his advisors, and then we have Mark Carney bringing Sean Fraser back into the party. So there's a huge, deeper than what people understand about this Century, and it's right inside of our government now. So, when I talked to Todd about this, Dan, Todd actually fact-checked me in time and corroborated everything that I just stated to you. So that's what people are talking about. And yes, Century is 100% about immigration. If that makes any sense.
Appreciate the enlightenment, Sean.
Should I
Very quick. I'm up against the break. You got to be quick.
Okay. Well, the carbon tax is enshrined in law. So in order for the carbon tax to be fully taken off, we have to have a parliament sitting for that to happen.
I said that 3 times today. Yep.
Yes. So other than that, we are going to have a deja vu of 2019 when the Liberals ran on axing the carbon tax. And then once they won the election, they said, oh, wait, this is
wait a minute. Now, Sean, when did they run on a plan of axing the carbon tax?
Or not axing it, but...
You just said that they ran on a campaign of axing the carbon tax. It didn't exist in 2019.
Ending the carbon tax.
Oh, okay. All right.
And then when they got into power, remember, all the cabinet members got together and they said, oh, well, this is actually a great way. Stephen Gable, well, this is the only greatest way. We have to keep it in place. So this is why I say this is a fraud, what we're seeing with the carbon tax. Because the same...
Doesn't look like a fraud to me. I'm looking out my window and I'm seeing gas at 17 cents a liter cheaper. Yeah, but Sean, we talked about this yesterday. What may be, what's going to go on, some theory that people's going into minds, oh, he's going to do this, he's going to do this. You don't know that. Do we know that?
No, for sure.
Is it fair to go out and start spouting that we're going to do something, or he's going to do this because I know? It's just not right.
It's not going to affect the prices at the gas station or at the grocery store, because it's consumer based. I don't know if trucking companies and delivery companies that have 500 trucks on the road fall under the exemption of the carbon tax. So they're still paying it. So therefore, we're still going to be paying for it at the grocery store.
No, you're probably correct on that one. I don't know the answer to it, but this whole, and Sean, I appreciate it. I'm up against the break. This whole, well, he's going to do this, or when he's in, and this goes both ways, right? How many times have you heard, well, when Pierre Poilievre's elected, he's going to do this, or when Mark Carney's elected, he's going to do. It's disingenuous. Right? There's enough misinformation out there these days. Let's try and deal in fact. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. The open hour continues after the break. Welcome back. Number of callers. We want to get to as many as we can here before the top of the hour now, 2405600. We welcome Rick to the program. Rick, how are you?
Hey, how you doing? Look, between now and 2100 is 60 years, 75 years.
75, yeah.
We need 60 million people to get to 100 million, and if you do the math, it's 800,000 per year.
And it's what? That's 1-point-something%, isn't it? It
doesn't matter what percent it is. It's 800,000 per year. So if you only use the 500,000, you're not going to make it.
Hey, Rick.
Okay, in terms of
did I hear you on Rob Snow yesterday?
You sure did. I'm your favorite caller.
Did you? Didn't you tell Rob that the carbon tax wasn't coming off gas today?
No, I told him the same thing I told you.
Yeah, but you said that they were going to leave it on, and I'm looking at my window and I'm seeing a drop in gas prices. Weird, eh?
No. What I said was the same thing that you said, that the Energy Board or the UARB were going to withhold some. It wasn't going to be the entire carbon tax, and that's what they did. The rebate has to go back to the people who bought the gas and already paid the carbon tax on it.
All right, just wanted to be clear, because when I hear you calling me out on another show, it kind of irks me.
No, I didn't call you out. You asked me where I heard it, and I said on your show, not on your show, on your station, because I listened to the news in the morning. I wasn't calling you out. I wasn't doing any of that. You missed it. Anyway, you got other callers. Get to them.
All right, Rick, appreciate it. 902-405-6000. Fact-checking in real time. 902-405-6000. Let's, where are we here? Let's go to Mike. Mike, how are you?
Good.
What's on your mind?
What do you think would be a fair monthly wage?
Well, if you listen to the Policy Center, it's $20 an hour, $23 for a living wage.
Yeah. So seniors in this country are living on just a little over $700 a month.
Right.
Which, if you divided that up by 40-hour work week, it's about $4 an hour.
Yeah, it's awful.
A little over $4 an hour.
I totally agree with you.
And I'm one of those people, and I'm just sick to my stomach. I got a call in right now to Isabel, the runner out in Cole Harbor area there, and Darren Fisher. I can't believe his cojones. He's running again. This guy here wouldn't answer my calls for over a year, and then when I kept calling the office, they turned around and sent the police to my house. Said I was harassing them. So that's what Darren Fisher's all about, folks. So these are the people that the thing I laugh about is somebody was talking about the lack of support for NDP. The only thing that's changed about the Liberals is the head. Everybody else back there is all the people that stood behind the boy Blunder and supported him. So, this whole thing about, my granddaddy voted Liberal and my daddy voted Liberal, like, people get a life. Like, these Liberals have ruined our country and will continue to do so. And I would really like to hear a politician out there talk about giving seniors a living wage, because right now I was getting $1,300 a month to live on, and they topped it up by $300 to $1,600. So I don't know if anybody else is out there living on $1,600 a month, but anyway, Dan, the thing is, it's not living, it's just barely surviving.
I hear you, Mike. Appreciate it.
Take care, bud.
902-405-6000. Last word today goes to Paul. Paul, how are you?
Not too bad, buddy. Quick thing about the minimum wage. It wasn't made for people to rent their own place and buy their own car and afford to drive their cars. For people entering the workforce that don't have skills or experience. I don't know. People expect everything given to them as soon as they start working.
That's not accurate, Paul. Minimum wage was originally created so that people could afford to eat and live on the wages that people were paying them. That's what its original intent was.
I grew up in the 60s.
It was before that. No, and I get it, Paul, and I understand where you're coming from, but there are an awful lot of jobs here that's the wage, and you can't live on it. I'm sorry?
There always was.
Right. And I know people that have
I don't remember anybody living in a house or an apartment and driving a car that was making minimum wage.
I don't know if there are many people doing that now.
Tell me about it. I'm living off $1,000 a month, but that's another story.
Right. Anyway, Paul, up against the break. I appreciate it, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir.
902-405-6000 is the number. Write that one down. Put it in your phone. Get it in somewhere where you can find it, because tomorrow, don't forget, the open hour moves to noon, because we will be doing house calls with Dr. John Gillis. Going to stop down for a break. We're going to get recharged and re-energized with a good cup of coffee. And when we come back, it's time for Science Files with Dr. Rob Thacker. Your science questions answered right here on the Todd Veinotte Show. We're back in minutes.
Facts.
I like the old theme music much better, but unfortunately we can't use it anymore. And I know Todd explained why, and I know Rob's disappointed too. Right, Rob?
I haven't heard the story.
Well, this show is now available in all kinds of different services. We can podcast these. We're all over the place. We're on Seeker, and we're on all anywhere you can get your podcasts. Mm-hmm. And in order for us to be able to do that, we can no longer use copyrighted music, because of the copyrights and the licensing and everything else. So that is why we lost the Dr. Rob theme, unfortunately.
Wow.
I offered to sing it. I offered to go into the studio and record it.
There's a chorus of people listening going, no!
And funny enough, Vanessa and Todd both, and they don't agree on a lot of things, but they were unanimous in their discontent of that.
Yeah.
That voice you hear, of course, is Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University.
Not singing his own theme song.
No, we won't sing your theme song anymore, but welcome, sir.
Pleasure to be back.
Did you get up on Saturday to watch the partial eclipse of the sun?
I did, and I can't show it on the radio, but I created a pretty amazing photograph
beautiful.
of it coming up.
Looks like a moon almost.
It does look like the moon because it was a crescent sun coming up,
right.
And so I got it just in front of, or just coming up over McNabb's Island in the harbour. So there's some trees in front of it. It looks really pretty cool, if I do say so myself.
It was a lot of sort of back and forth on that with our weather specialist about if it was going to be cloudy or not.
Yeah. So I was following it from the Wednesday onwards. So as everyone who went and saw the total eclipse will remember, that was just an amazing clear sky. I mean, that was just unheard of in the middle of April to get a clear sky right on the day you need it. And then, amazingly, on Saturday morning, there's a big bank of cloud coming in. But for us, we were at Point Pleasant. We had this tiny little window that the sun came up in, and then 15 minutes later, it was in a bank of cloud. Right, but we got to see it, and I was like, "Yes!"
It's like Christmas for people like Rob Thacker.
Yeah,
when we have these things. So maybe those are the people we're talking about. What was it?
Okay. Sure.
And now let's get into the science part of this.
Sure. So
science guy.
This was a partial solar eclipse of the sun. So last year we had a total solar eclipse, and so the difference is with the partial solar eclipse, you don't get complete coverage of the sun, so it doesn't go completely dark the same way you have in a total eclipse, but if you have a good pair of viewing glasses and so on, you can look at it and you will see the crescent shape of the moon overlapping the sun, right? And so that's exactly what we had, but we had it at dawn. Like literally as the sun was coming up. We were incredibly lucky geographically for that to happen. If we lived in in Hamilton, I had colleagues at McMaster University and they were like, grump, we don't get to see it at all. Because it's basically most of the time, by the time it gets around to them, it's pretty much covered or gone off the end of the rest of the sun.
Right.
So we were really lucky to be able to see that here. And like I said, we got about 15 minutes of viewing. I was handing out some viewing glasses as well to people who didn't have them. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Does it happen every year? Because everybody remembers last year's event because we talked about it for weeks ahead of it, and everybody was just absolutely awestruck when they saw it. And then this one I kind of found out about it because it was in a weather forecast. Did the partials happen every year?
So you can either have, you can obviously get a partial away from a total. Right. So if you're off the track of the total eclipse, then you will see a partial. So if you have a total eclipse that year, then you will definitely have a partial. So I think I know we don't get total eclipses every year. Right. So we don't have a total eclipse this year, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about that. But I know there will be one next year because that's going to be on the eastern side of Greenland. Right. And that will sweep down towards Europe, actually. So but all of this depends on something called syzygy, which is the alignment of the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. And so we can calculate it all in a computer and tell you what's going to happen on a year-to-year basis. So all of the solar eclipses for the next 100 years have all been calculated for a number of years.
Space news. Yesterday we saw the launch of, what is it, FRAM? Is that the proper terminology? Falcon 9 lifted off from...
the polar mission.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's the, let me see here. Falcon 9 lifted off at 9:47 from Kennedy, carrying the crew Dragon spacecraft resilience. That's the polar mission, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion of this. I'm not sort of hugely interested in this, if I'm really honest. But there will be people who argue that because you're going into area around the poles, why the poles interesting? Because basically you have all of the radiation from the sun coming down and we get the aurora and so on. So you could see a lot more of that if you're going around the poles than you would on a normal sort of equatorial mission. But I know they're talking about this and so on from the perspective of it being a real first for astronauts in space. But really, this is just something different we can do because you have to use a lot of energy to get into a polar orbit if you launch from the equator. Right, so one of the reasons for proposing CANSO as a launch place is because you're away from the equator, so you have less of the energy boost. Literally, you can imagine the surface of the Earth going around gives you more energy, right? So if you get away closer to the pole, then you've got less of that energy that you have to get rid of if you want to go round on the poles. So generally, we've sent crewed missions around on equatorial orbits because favorably, energetically, that's the easiest thing to do.
Cheaper.
Yep, exactly.
Not to burn as much fuel.
Yep.
Right. 902-405-6000 is the number. One last question for me, Dr. Rob, before we move on to the phones. I know you were following the story of the stranded astronauts as closely as many were. They're back on Earth now.
Yeah.
What have you learned since they've come back, and are they going to be like poked and prodded and studied to death now that they've had this experience?
So here's the thing about that, and so I had a little discussion with a couple of people about this. That with the twin experiment, the Kellys, right? Then they knew ahead of time what they were doing, right? And they thought very carefully about it. And they did. Scott Kelly had tons and tons and tons of tests done before he went up. Then he comes back down. They do a whole bunch of them when he comes back down again. With Williams and Wilmore, they were only expected to be up there for 8 days. So I really doubt that they've had the barrage of tests done on them that they were doing for the twin test, right? So I suspect, of course, that they will have been tested for certain things, bone density, all of those things will be recorded and put into the database on following what happens to physiology and so on in space. But I doubt that they're being absolutely bombarded. And in fact, I wouldn't be at all surprised if they're going through significant rehabilitation right now to recover muscle and strength and so on. That takes a couple of months if you're up there for a long time, right? So Chris Hadfield had quite a struggle getting back to it. So they'll primarily be doing that kind of recovery stuff. I don't expect that they will be really subjected to a barrage of tests. They've had a hard enough time as it is.
Right? Can you imagine?
Yeah.
I still can't to this day. You're going on an 8-day trip, Dan. Okay, I bring
9 months later,
and 9 months later you come back and you were literally stranded. It wasn't like you had a choice, right? You had to get over that. Oh my goodness part, and then carry on and do what astronauts do, and they did. They worked the whole time they're up there.
Yeah, I mean, they were worked into the crew schedule, and so they were given responsibilities for a number of experiments on board. But the one that I found fun was that they ended up doing a spacewalk to look at bacteria that might possibly be left on the outside of the International Space Station, which I thought was really interesting to look at. They did that a few years ago with testing how long, I'm just going to say it, beer bugs, which are bacteria that had been grown in beer, right, survived outside the International Space Station. And it was quite a long time.
Are they starting a craft brewery up there?
I don't think so.
902-405-6000 is the number if you want to ask a more intelligent question than my last one to Dr. Rob. This is your opportunity. We're going to stop and take a break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Holstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. This is Science Files. He is Dr. Rob Thacker here to answer your questions. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Let's get to the phone lines and welcome Carl to the show. Carl, how are you?
Hey, very well. Thank you for taking my call. How you guys doing this afternoon, gentlemen?
Good.
Great, thanks, Carl.
All right. So, I needed to lead off with do. I love the X-Files.
Okay, here we go.
Here it comes.
First of all, hey, if I would have been, scheduled to do 8 days in space or whatever, and then it'd be stuck there for 9 months, I'd be fit to be tied. That's
right.
Yeah, no, it was. I'm sure it was very difficult. Like when you saw Suni Williams being taken out of the capsule, the smile on her face was about as big as it could be.
Unbelievable!
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
Your question, Carl.
Yeah, my question is now from the space station as well. Now, first of all, that lady was up there long enough to have a baby. Do you think they'll actually? Who's going to be the first country? Maybe a Russian woman or something giving birth in space. She could have had a baby up there. She was up there so long, right? Is that something? Is that a test that they would consider on the space station?
So I've got a take on that might not be what you're expecting, but I really don't think they will do that for a number of safety reasons, right? That if anything goes wrong in a pregnancy, it's irresponsible to have it on a space station where you are not in a good situation when it comes to emergencies there. Right?
Sure.
And so I don't think this is going to happen in a hurry. It will, I presume, at some point, but it's just not going to be on the list of things that a space agency is really going to be thinking about right now.
Right. Okay, so now the reason why I called is, there's more and more sightings, given the X-File tune and all that. This is crazy. It's undeniable. People are seeing things all over the world. And even from the space station, didn't they see something from the space station that's unexplainable? Can you elaborate on any of that?
So I'm not sure what you're referring to there, but I mean, it's well known, for example, that pilots and air traffic controllers sometimes see things on radar, see things visually that they can't explain. That's accepted, right? But that doesn't mean those particular things that they're seeing are alien visitation, right? It's just something that's in their particular information stream that they can't explain. So unidentified flying object is essentially trying to really put a frame on that. And I really struggle with it because like when you're flying, you suddenly see something and then it disappears below the cloud layer or something like that. You're very often going to be in a situation where you can't necessarily pin what it is down very quickly. Right.
So, but see, I was talking about in space, not in our atmosphere. I'm talking about in space. What we're seeing going on in space.
So here's the thing, right? I mean, I haven't heard any sort of real concerns about this that have bubbled up within the sphere that I work in astronomy and astrophysics, right? And I'm fairly certain if there was anything that was really seriously credible, right, because all of the people who go up to the space station are very well-trained people. They're trained to be observant. They're trained to be skeptical. They would, if there was a situation where they could actually point to something, there would be enough sort of law around that I think it would be a discussion. A little bit like what happened with the pilots coming out, talking about, oh, we see this, we see that, which has some national defense ramifications as well, because if it's air-to-water drones or something like that, that's something that the military would like people to know is out there and they need to have countermeasures for and things like that. But in terms of stuff from the International Space Station, there's a story from Scott Carpenter, I think, many, many years ago from Mercury, but that's about all I've heard about.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your answer, and you have a wonderful afternoon, guys.
You too, Carl. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000. One of the things that came to light, and we know we've been watching the Oval Office an awful lot these days. Not to go any.
Sure.
I mean, all of the things that are negative about Trump, he certainly is on television from the Oval Office every day, a lot. That being said, he announced the new fighter jet. I think they called it the F-47.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And he said they had been testing it.
Yep.
So these experimental jets are being tested in, I would assume, American airspace.
They probably are being tested around Area 51.
Quite frequently. Yeah. So if somebody catches a glimpse of something, I mean, there have been cases where people have catched, and not to suggest that there aren't aliens out there, because I don't know if there is or not, but something like that happens, and we've had cases where experimental aircraft have been spotted and people thought that they were alien craft. Do you remember the wing, was it the bomber, the B-1 bomber? That looked like a flying wing?
So both the B-1 and the F-117 Nighthawk were... So the F-117 Nighthawk was trialed as something called Blue something. I can't remember what it was. But that had a very unusual geometry. Right? And you can imagine people seeing that thing flying would have tripped out. And so with things like that, it takes literally between 20 and 25 years for them to become declassified. Right, so now we know all of those things that were happening, but you go back, you can trace it to all of the UFO reports from Area 51.
Right, and it kind of all makes sense when the president's gloating about his airplane, because they named it 47. And the president said it. They've been testing it secretly. So and not to suggest that explains all of the things that people are seeing, but there's these things are going on all the time.
There is and I know people get a little bit frustrated with me for saying this, but there is a lot of value in these kind of discussions for the military. Right? There's national defense issues. Something's out there. We don't know what it is, so we want people to be aware that we need to go and do something about this. And then on top of that, with testing, it's a good cover story, right? So you just sort of like have a few people, oh, you see that? See that? And that just sort of like deflects people away from looking at it and take it seriously, right?
902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000 is the telephone number. Dr. Rob is here for the next 40 minutes or so to answer all of your science-related questions. That kind of testing, Rob, obviously each aircraft is different. I would imagine, from start to finish takes a long time for these things to come to market, right? So, if something's ready to be announced by the president, I would imagine that research and those test flights have been going on for some time.
I mean, I'm a little bit surprised that, maybe I've just missed it, but I was looking for pictures and I couldn't find anything. Right?
I don't think there are. They had one picture that was behind him, and it was a profile picture from underneath, and And he did say that,
Yeah, so that kind of tells you that it's still fairly secret if they're not even putting like mock-ups out there.
Right.
So, but you're right. It does take a long time. Normally they have these fly-offs of different competing firms and so on. I wonder whether that happened. I don't know if we know about that. So it's unusual for them to give a contract just to one company. So I would have expected there'd been a fly-off at some point.
It was awarded to Boeing, I think, got the contract for it.
Yeah. Well, Boeing needs a contract right now to have a good story because they're not doing so well, right? So I'd be curious to see what comes out of the next few months.
Again, 902-405-6000 is the telephone number. Dr. Rob is going to be here after we get you updated on the news at the bottom of the hour. He'll be here till the top of the clock. So if you have a science-related question that's been burning at you, that's been bugging you, that's something you say, hey, maybe Dr. Rob can answer that. Perfect opportunity. The lines are open. Again, 902-405-6000 is the number. We're going to stop down and take a break. You are listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. He's Dr. Rob. I'm Dan. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Science files for the next 30 minutes. If you have a science-related question, Dr. Rob will do his level best to answer what he can, when he can.
I was going to say some of the best ones are the ones that I can't answer.
See, that's, we used to, and in the old days when we had science files, we used to, kind of frame it when I tried to stump the science guy, but it's not easy to do.
No, actually, because the best science questions are the ones you go,
right?
I've never really thought about that. That's really cool. And then you think about what you need to know to figure out the answer, and that's the process of science.
And then that's you should write an essay on it. 902-405-6000 is the number. Aaron, how are you?
Not too bad. Good afternoon, guys.
Hey.
What's your question for Dr. Rob, please?
I got two questions. First one is the recent study that scientists had on freezing light. I read through it, and I don't know if I quite understand what they were talking about, but they basically said that they could lower the temperature enough so that they could freeze light and make it into a crystalline material while still maintaining its photonic abilities. And I'm just like, what did they do there exactly?
So this is new for me, and so there are some strange things you can do in terms of trapping light that I've seen, right? So I've heard about people putting that into certain configurations, and then you can hold the light in a particular context for a while. It's really related to changing the overall speed of the light. That's the key thing there.
That's what I gathered. Yeah. Okay. They also said that the photons realign somewhat, kind of, I guess, like a laser would, and that also was another property it showed. I'm not sure, but it's definitely new.
Coherency, I would guess. So that would make sense. I mean, if you were putting the photons into basically the same state, then you might well expect them to be coherent. Sure.
Okay. Another question I have is about gravitational waves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when they observed the gravitational waves from colliding black holes and neutron stars and whatnot, how did they know they were waves, for one thing?
So that's literally comes out of Einstein's theory of general relativity. So what we do is we do an analysis of space and time, and then we look at what happens when you have a really cataclysmic event, and then what will happen to the energy from that as it goes through space and time. And so literally it will create a particular solution in Einstein's equations that is a wave solution. And so Einstein actually figured that out fairly early. There was someone called Donda who came along a little bit later to do more of that. But it's an allowed solution of Einstein's equations. And so we actually know there are some really unusual things about them. Normally we talk about, say, for an electromagnetic wave like light or radio waves, they have an electric and a magnetic polarization that are 90 degrees to one another, whereas gravitational waves are not the same. They actually have their two polarizations are about 45 degrees apart from one another, so they're quite a bit different, and that makes measuring them actually that much harder. It's why it took us over 100 years to be able to do it.
Was that also the reason they were able to determine they weren't particles but waves coming? And if they were the waves, did that also help them to determine that gravity is a quantum effect?
So there's no hope, in my opinion, in the foreseeable future of ever being able to detect a single particle of the gravitational field, right? That's so-called graviton. That is such a weak thing to measure that we really have no... I don't even know if anyone's thought about how we could go about measuring that. I don't even have any ideas myself. I've never heard anyone talk about it. Yeah.
You believe that gravity is a wave, a quantum effect possibly then, rather than a graviton of some kind?
So the logic goes that all physical theories, so we talk about electromagnetism, we can talk about the nuclear forces, we can talk about gravity. The theory goes that they all have a quantum version, but as you likely know, the challenge that Einstein couldn't get his head around is what does a quantum theory of gravity look like? And there's a lot of reasons why it's very, very difficult. Quantum theory and gravity don't fit together in a natural way like some of the other theories do. And so we don't have that theory. And so that could be any sort of the membrane theories, string theories, and so on. Who knows? It's probably 22nd century mathematics to figure that one out.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Have a good one, Aaron. 902-405-6000. Two things out of that. Black holes. Rob.
Don't suck.
Black holes don't suck. We were going to make a T-shirt about that. We never did. And two, string theory. Isn't that like Dr. Sheldon Cooper stuff?
Yeah. So this is really one of the challenges with the mathematical description of a quantum theory of gravity is how you reconcile quantum theory and the properties of gravity. Gravity is what we call a very, very non-linear theory. It loops back on itself in some strange ways, like energy warp space and time, but then space and time change how energy moves and things like that. So getting that into a quantum theory is really difficult. Quantum theory, we like everything to add linearly, right? And it just doesn't work like that in gravity. So it's really very, very difficult. And people have been working on this for, like I said, so long. And there's hope, but there's been hope for a long time as well.
902-405-6000. We welcome Alexander to the program. Alexander, how are you?
I'm fine, Dan, and good afternoon, Dr. Thacker.
Hi.
Another quick question for you, Dr. Thacker, of something I can't get my little brain wrapped around, but I was reading that a neutron star, a cubic inch of material would weigh over 10 billion tons. Is that correct?
Yeah, because it's a very large amount because it's literally what we call nuclear matter on the macro scale. So it's literally as dense as the nucleus of an atom, but on the size that you and I could appreciate. So
how would, I guess there's a theory to calculate that. Is that the only way you can come up with this amazing amount of weight?
So it's basically this. You've got something. So one of the ironic thing is, if you had a teaspoon of it, it would literally fly apart. But anyway, so when you have a neutron star, the thing that's keeping it together is the amount of gravitational attraction versus all of the repulsive forces in the strong nuclear force that would try and keep the system apart. So there's eventually a balance, right? And that balance is such that you have the amount of material in a star but collapsed all the way down to something that's a handful of kilometers across, which is a mind-bogglingly large density, right? And so on its own, it wouldn't have enough overall density. So that's something that you have to think about collectively.
Okay, and lastly, where is the nearest neutron star in relation to Earth?
Oh gosh, off the top of my head, I wouldn't know that. No, there's going to be some, I'm sure, within a few hundred light years, but off the top of my head, I wouldn't know.
So there's the one in our own galaxy, or
yeah. There's going to be plenty in our own galaxy, right? I mean, 400 light years is fairly close on the scale of the galaxy, or a few hundred light years anyway.
Great, I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Thanks, Alexander. 902-405-6000. Gravitational attraction, not just a typical Friday night on Argyle Street.
Sure.
That's my awful attempt at comedy.
Yeah.
Back to the phones. Eric, how are you?
Maybe we should get Chris in here.
Fair enough. Eric, how are you?
Good afternoon. How are you guys doing?
Good. Your question, please.
I'm sorry, I'm not feeling good. That plane that turned upside down in Ontario, Does Rob have any theory on what happened with that plane?
That was
the plane of that size turning upside down. It's kind of weird, isn't it?
the crash at Pearson.
Yeah. So I saw that. I mean, I think there's a video of it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Out there. So it just looks like you've got a situation where one of the wings tips touch the ground, and as soon as you've got that, you've got a twisting moment, and then that twisting moment will have turned into something that lifts up the other side.
And it sheared one of the wings too, right? Or the tail section. Something broke, so it would have given it a better pivot to get over.
You've got to remember that to actually turn a plane over, you probably don't actually need that much energy to do it, right? So it's designed essentially to be an efficient flying machine. So actually flipping it over, I mean, you could keep on just turning your rudder and eventually you'd go anyway. So if you basically hold on to something and that turns into a turning moment, then yeah, it's going to flip.
Did that answer your question, Eric?
Yeah, that's pretty good. Oh, I got one more question. You know, they went up there for 8 days and they stayed up there for 8 months. What exactly, if anything, are people on the ground and people in space doing? Like, I know the control people control it to a certain point, but what are the astronauts doing?
What's the daily routine of an astronaut on the space station?
So my understanding of what happened is, as soon as they knew that they were going to be there for a fairly significant time, they looked at the crew roster. So all of the astronauts have various responsibilities. Like if you're the crew commander, then obviously you're commanding, right, and doing a lot of that. They will have some other things they do as well, but that's going to be your primary responsibility. Then you're going to have mission specialists that are going to be working on this payload and whatever in a given science experiment. So my understanding was then Williams and Wilmore ended up mucking in on a number of experiments, right? And there's always more things you can do with an experiment. Trust me, as a scientist, I know that, right? You can always take more data. You can always do more calibrations and things like that. So they they worked in on on some of the experiments that were going on. And then they ended up doing, like, as we talked about, the spacewalk, right, outside the space station to look at the bacteria on the outside of the space station. So they were literally doing stuff that the other astronauts would have done, but there was more things that they could do as well.
There's more hands, so it made lighter work, as they say. Thanks, Eric.
Okay, thank you.
902-405-6000 is the number. We're going to stop down, take our last break here on Science Files. There's a couple of lines open if you want to get in. 902-405-6000. We're back in minutes. All right, just a few minutes left here on this Tuesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show and this edition of Science Files. He is Dr. Rob Thacker from St. Mary's University, and he's here to answer your science questions. Let's get right back to the phones and see if we can get through as many as we can here. Dave, how are you?
Very good, gentlemen. Thanks for taking my call. Have you guys seen the iceberg out in the harbor today?
No.
It's drifting in.
Is it really?
Around McNabb's Island.
Well, I'll have to go look.
April Fools.
That's afternoon. Doesn't that make you a fool?
You're the fool.
Doesn't that make you the fool?
Yeah. I guess it is feasible. I don't know, but anyways, I think I got you good there.
You did. Okay. I'll admit you did.
Anyways, okay. Having said that, now, Dr. Thacker, first of all, have you ever been to the pyramids in Giza, Egypt at all?
No, I can't say I have.
Okay, that's on my bucket list. They're amazing, I'm sure, but I'd like to get there. I'm not too sure if I'll make it. But I do have a question, but apparently recent technology, space-based technology, has discovered up to 8 columns underneath one of the pyramids. Mm-hmm. And this has been going quite viral. I think Joe Rogan had some guests on. And,
no.
No, I know, but he does get some very, very interesting science guests on there as well, I might add. But the technology we have today, how about that? Now, inside the pyramids, there are amazing engineered chambers. We can admit that, right?
Yeah, we've seen them.
The way it was structured is just mind-boggling to me, and that all came before the discovery of the wheel, by the way. So, if this was how many thousands of years ago, I just can't imagine. But anyways, that's another story. We all know the history of we've done experiments. They even say with technology and equipment today would be very difficult to create these things. But I guess space-based technology has been able to beam down. I mean, look, you've got satellites up there that can hit a license plate and read it out, right? So underground, that's a whole different thing. Now, we must have technology where we're mining, putting huge investments in mining to discover what is down maybe a kilometer or two because we can sort of see various ways.
So you're talking about ground penetrating radar?
Doppler maybe, or whatever, I don't know, whatever the technology, but this came from a satellite or whatever they beamed down. Certainly we must have some technology where we can see below the ground to a certain degree, I would think. But, and if that's the case, 8 columns, and they go down up to apparently 2 kilometers possibly. So this is just the latest trending thing. And I know there's a lot of fake news out there. I just love this kind of stuff myself, but I mean, it wouldn't surprise me that there could be something else under these pyramids over thousands of years. So do we have the technology to penetrate the Earth a kilometer down where we can sort of see there is some form of structures or some defining circular whatever structures that could be under there? Maybe you can enhance me on that.
Well, I wish we had Jonathan Fowler here, because Jonathan's an expert in ground penetrating radar. But
right. Mm-hmm.
So my understanding is you can get down a few tens of meters with it, right? It's dependent upon what you're actually trying to survey through as well, right? The density of the material. So, for example, I know on Mars we've done some ground penetrating radar that goes down and has told us there's potentially minerals beneath the surface there, but I don't think it's incredibly deep. So my understanding is like a few tens of meters is what you do. Now, if you went to something like, I don't know, I guess ice, you might be able to get down further. I'm not sure about that. But so my understanding is if you want to know and you want to go through something hard like a pyramid, I'm not sure how you're going to do that. Right.
Right. Now, again, it's really under the pyramid.
Deep.
So you Well, 10 meters is still fairly deep, but which could give you an indication of something. But, there's so many mysteries on this planet that we haven't discovered as yet. We're always, stumbling on various things. I mean, I was down.
Well, we know. I'm going to take an issue with that, Dave, because I think we do know quite a lot. I mean, I'm always prepared to say when we don't, but we do know quite a lot.
That's for sure. But I mean, I know I was down in Belize and we went on a tour and they had recently discovered another pyramid down there, a completely different era. It was under vegetation. This was pretty massive pyramid.
There's a lot of them down there. I've actually been to Belize and seen some of them. Yeah.
Yes. It's so like I said, we're uncovering things that we don't know much about, and who was here that built them and why or whatever. And a lot of them are sort of set in different positions that sort of, logically, I guess, with the astrology and whatever. So there's a lot to it.
Well,
there was
people in the past have a very good understanding. I mean, you look at pretty much all cultures, they had a very good understanding of the sky and alignments. Right, I mean that goes back to the Neolithic times, right? So everyone knows about Stonehenge and how that was organized. But you can go to places in Ireland, there's places in Denmark, and so on, and they're all perfectly aligned, right? With key
Stonehenge, I guess, is one.
Yeah, exactly. They're all aligned with key events like the longest day, shortest day, and things like that. So
well, we had some Sorry, go ahead.
This is the thing. People were smart in the past, right? They didn't have the books that we had, but they were still smart and they still figured things out. Right, I think we need to give them credit for that.
Did they have the labor and machinery to drag some of these things? I guess they did. They may have had time on their hands.
I'm sure they could have.
So
here's the one thing. I mean, I can imagine it's actually very difficult to move heavy stones across sand. That must be quite hard to do.
Right? With the logs and rolling it.
You can't see how they're going to do that. So maybe they put matting down and then they rolled over that or something like that. So again, I don't know how they did that. But again, rolling over logs and stuff like that, that's something that's been talked about a lot, for example, with the Stonehenge stones and things like that.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate it. I want to get to more calls.
Okay.
Thanks, man. 902-405-6000. Last word today goes to Wayne. Wayne, how are you?
Good, yourself.
Good. Your question for Dr. Rob, please.
Dr. Rob, I want to know about the speed of light. And we know the speed, of course. But does that ever decay? Does the speed of light ever slow down? And if it does the speed of it slow down as it decays? Can you just fill in those blanks?
So sure. So I can tell you the speed of light is different in different mediums. So, for example, it's slower in water. Right? That's something. But if you're specifically asking me, does light ever slow down in the vacuum? The answer to that is, as far as we can tell, no. Right? So
then where does it get its energy to maintain that speed?
Well, that's actually one of the things that comes out of relativity theory, that if you have no mass, you don't have a choice. You've got to go at the speed of light.
Right.
It's literally built into the equations, right? So where does it get its energy from? If you have light that's traveling through the universe and the universe is expanding, it will lose energy, but the speed will be the same. It will be the frequency that changes, right? And so the energy of a photon is given by Planck's constant times the frequency. So it won't lose speed, but it will lose frequency. Its frequency will go down, so it will have less energy.
And therefore, it eventually would be, you would not be able to detect it eventually.
Eventually, you'll go down through radio waves and so on to something very, very low energy. Sure, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wayne. Appreciate the question.
All right, then. Bye.
902-405-6000 is the number. Put that one in your phone. Write it down and put it somewhere, because Dr. Rob will be back next Tuesday to answer all of your science-related questions. So to go back onto our discussion on light, is it false that when we see a star from a distant galaxy, that has happened over
a long time in the past?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, would that, because of that frequency change?
You don't even have to go to another galaxy, because it's true of all of the ones within our own galaxy. So the nearest star, Alpha Centauri, 4 light years away. So when we look at it, that light is 4 years old. Right? So people often say, "Oh, could the star possibly exploded and not be there anymore?"
We'll find out in 4 years.
If it was far enough away, right? But that's going to be the question about when we eventually see a supernova. It happened a long time ago.
So as we travel closer to Alpha Centauri in the years where we have space travel and we're able to travel towards it, will it get brighter as we get closer to it?
Will it get brighter? Yes, right? So the brightness of an object is going down as 1 over the distance squared. So inevitably, as you get closer, it's going to be brighter. Yeah.
And bigger, obviously.
It will look bigger, sure. But it's going to be a long time before it looks anything other than something that's a pinpoint of light.
And a long time before we're able to travel 4 light years.
Oh, goodness me. This is the thing that people talk about. We only have ideas, and the practicalities of that are really... It's tough enough for us to talk about going to Mars. And Mars is just like... Mars is literally... It's not even your backyard. It's like your back doorstep compared to going to something like Alpha Centauri, which is like way in another continent.
Is there research going on, like the next generation of... And I'm going to use the Star Trek term here of warp engine. Is there...
So there is stuff that happens on that, but it's not taken very seriously. Right. It's literally like NASA has given a couple of contracts out in the past just to, I don't know. I won't finish the sentence. I was going to say something rather disparaging. But anyway, that kind of stuff is largely science fiction. What people have theorized about is how you would build something like a nuclear rocket or something like that. But again, you can look at the engineering of it and the physics of it, but the actual cost of it is just insane. Right. And so I don't see that happening. It's not even like the kind of thing that Musk could think about, thankfully. But no, that's way, way off. And it's going to be a long time before we do that. We haven't even got our feet wet in the solar system yet. And trust me, if Pluto, and I'll use Pluto, from the sun to Pluto is literally a couple of feet, then the nearest star is over a mile away. Right. It's a long way to get to the nearest star.
No warp core. No matter-antimatter engines.
Alas,
at least not yet.
Alas, no.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks to Vanessa Vananez on the other side of the glass for all the work that she does. Don't forget, tomorrow, Dr. John is here to answer your medical questions. The open hour goes at noon. And until then, take care of yourselves and be kind to one another.